Hey, so this week in organisational health, I want to talk about the boss. The title of the article is the good, the bad, and the bossy. Now, when I was serving in the military, one of the things that we had, which was a term of endearment as you started to progress through the ranks, was being called the boss. Bearing in mind that the military is a very, very structured chain of command and a rank structure, and indeed protocols to if you're a commissioned officer or a warrant officer, you are called sir. There's pretty much nobody that ever, no good boss that really ever worried about being called the boss. Indeed, it was a great way to build recognition. It stood for as a sign of respect. And I suppose in some respects I can recall being called the boss, and you kind of like, you felt like you had good engagement with the team. And my experience since leaving the military in terms of what I now do today as a high performance coach, I see the same in organizations. I see the same in businesses within the team, that the term of endearment of boss is used for leaders, for managers. But my question for you today is, are you a good boss? And the reality is, more often than not, within an organization, we are promoting people, through their journey in the organization, whether that's a structured career path or whether it's actually, being next in line. And so often there isn't maybe the structural focus on how you can develop and how you can become a good boss. So this article really, I want you to think about, are you a good boss? And reflect on that, and then maybe have a think about, in your experience, in your past, who have you, been led by, been managed by, who actually fits the bill of being a good boss. And there's some areas of focus within being a good boss, and I think one which might not immediately spring to mind, but is of delegation, and it's being able to delegate effectively to your team. Now, that's not just giving instructions and giving tasks for people to do, it's empowering people to actually go and fulfill a task to a particular point. Often we just ask people to go and do something until the next decision is required, in which case they do something, they come back to you, and if you're familiar with that, the likelihood is you're going to be very busy with other people, your team, demanding your time and asking you, and then the reality there is you become less effective as a boss, less effective as a leader or a manager. And so when we become really effective at delegation, we actually start to empower the team. We start to recognize what tasks are going to be incredibly useful for that person in developing them, who has particular strengths or who enjoys a particular role and responsibility. And it allows you then to focus on the job in hand. So if you're a leader, it allows you to start thinking, and focusing at the strategic level. If you're a manager, it allows you to start thinking in terms of the efficiencies of delivery. So the next part, and again, this is probably more familiar, is do you foster an environment of highly engaged individuals? Do you encourage and enthuse your team to be a part of the wider culture of the organization? Do you focus on developing that culture? Do you look at reward and regular I term it as feed forward, giving people advice and guidance on how best they can engage within their role, their team? Now, the interesting point on this one, when we look at engagement, is actually how much time do you invest in your team? How much time do you invest in your team members? So, for instance, do you have a weekly one-to-one with your members, with the team? Is there communication that's effectively passed, as opposed to actually we shroud in secrecy some of the things that we know that we probably should be talking about because it gives us a false sense of authority. So then, looking at that high engagement, there are a multitude of different things that you can do to start to really shift that towards a better working environment. And then we've got the core values. And these are really interesting when we start to think about, firstly, do you have you recognized core values in the business? And secondly, if you've recognized them, do you internalize them? And by that, do you turn up each and every day the best version of you for that organization? You really get the core values. Now, 3 great questions that you can ask yourself here is, right, 1, who epitomizes the core values in the organization? Who absolutely lives and breathes those values? The second question is, maybe who might you not miss? And this may include yourself, by the way, if they weren't there, because they don't epitomize those core values. And whilst that's a tough question to ask and certainly want to reflect on, it's incredibly valuable, because you can start to see where the values turn up and what behaviours you want to see exhibited in the organisation. And then that third question is, how do you sit? Where do you sit? And that self-reflection is incredibly powerful, because you can then start to determine just how well you can turn up. Now, what makes a bad boss? Now, in my experience, I've always come across the bad boss is the do as I say, not as I do, not leading or managing by example, and actually, often it can be seen as taking a position of power and abusing it. And then you've got this focus, the next level up of being bossy, and this is where a truly authoritarian approach is adopted, where someone really does focus on the power, focus on the fact that they are the most important. Now, I think there is a grey margin here where people don't necessarily recognize that being bossy or being a bad boss in the true context of it, because probably not been taught. So don't be too hard on yourself if you begin to recognize some of those traits, but rather than start to engineer some of the good boss traits to move yourself in that direction. The fact that we're able to reflect, face the mirror, hold the mirror up, is a good thing. So where do you sit? How do you grade yourself in terms of being a great boss or being a good boss? Are you a good boss? Are the traits that you have that you want to work on? Are you bossy? Are you bossy in certain environments or certain aspects? Have a think about it. Hold the mirror up. Take a good reflection. The one thing is that I think when you focus on being a good boss and have a high level of self-awareness, of responsibility, take ownership in that respect, actually you can shift towards being a really good boss, and in fact going beyond that to being a truly great boss.